It was another loss for Boston College, who dropped Saturday's game to the Syracuse Orange 21-6. What is going on with these Boston College Eagles? We'll talk about that on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Thank you all for joining me. We're going to start talking about Boston College's loss to Syracuse, their fourth straight loss of the season, and it just seems to be going downhill every game that they've been playing over the last 4 weeks. We'll dive into everything that's happened to that. But if this is your first time listening to Locked On Boston College, I want to thank you. And especially for those of you out there that have made us your first listen. This is the first thing you do, every morning. You listen to Locked On BC. You are my MVPs, and I want to thank all of you. And if you don't already, make Locked On Boston College part of your daily routine, whether it's on your car ride to work, during an exercise, or maybe even when you're cooking dinner. I like listening to Locked On Celtics while I'm cooking dinner. Maybe you like to listen to Locked On Boston College, just doing the same thing. All right, Saturday, another depressing loss for Boston College. I can't stress this enough. 21-6. It was a game Boston College was leading 3-0 going into halftime, but it was one of those games that just felt like you just could sense something was going to happen, and it was the third quarter all over again. But jumping to the beginning of the game. So going into this game, the big question mark had been who was going to be the quarterback. And I had predicted all along that it would be Dennis Grosel with a short leash, and I nailed it. It was Dennis Grosel with a short leash. He played the first two series and just did the usual Dennis Grosel stuff. I don't want to bash the kid too badly because, again, good kid, good leader. But you know what you're getting to expect with him. He can't hit the long stuff. I think he went for a big deep pass and missed badly on his second drive. And BC got a turnover on that second drive to get them in, with some momentum, and they got nothing out of it. Just like they have been for weeks. They've just been not able to finish on anything. So Hafley goes to the bullpen. And he brings in the player that every fan has been crowing about, Emmett Morehead, a 6'5" freshman out of California. He played in Virginia. He was a 3-star, didn't play at all last year. Has only started a handful of games just in his entire career, and he gets put in. And what does he do on his first drive? Hits Zay Flowers with a 44-yard pass. Now, clearly, they brought Morehead in to try to hit deeper passes because he was gunning them a lot. And, he hit one. He wasn't very effective just in general. I think he was like 6 for 15 for 85 yards. But BC was going to try something with him. And that, sparked a little juice into them. But then there was this weird rotation of quarterbacks because at the end of the first half, it went back to Grosel. Start of the second half, it went to Grosel. Then it went back to Morehead. Then they ended the game with Grosel again. It just seemed kind of haphazard. Hafley had his own rationale about a lot of it, saying that he knew all along he was going to start with Grosel and go to Morehead. That at the end of the game, he wanted Grosel in there because he had more experience, but none of it really mattered. BC squandered opportunity after opportunity. There was one drive, I think it was the same one that Morehead hit the long pass, that Alec Lindstrom snapped the ball over his head. Morehead on another one got sacked a whole bunch. I think he got sacked 5 times during the game. A combination of Morehead and Grosel got sacked 5 times. A horrible game for the offensive line. Really, really struggled. And it was particularly noticeable once Tyler Vrabel left the game and was replaced by Jack Connolly. Jack Connolly had a tough game. Not gonna rip the kid. He did a really tough game there. Who was eventually replaced by Zion Johnson, who kicked over from guard over to tackle. Then they put Ozzie Trapillo, who is supposed to be the next best thing in college blocking. They put him in, and it all didn't matter because they couldn't score. So this was just another game. The offense, it looks disjointed. There was issues in the red zone where Boston College just couldn't score. They had a game. They were down to the 1-yard line at one point, and they just couldn't get it in. They put Grosel in, and I honestly don't have an issue with them putting Grosel in when it was short yardage because, it's very clear Emmett Morehead is raw. As much as you want to say that he's better, he definitely has more raw talent than Grosel, but it's not refined. He hasn't played in a couple of years. Hafley had him in a position to do good things. When it kind of got near the end zone, I totally got it, because you need Grosel in there to make quick reads. Morehead couldn't do that. He'd make a first read, and then he'd kind of turtle up and get hit. He got sacked a bunch of times, right? So I didn't hate that. I kind of hated that they didn't go with Garwo with a couple runs there to try to punch it in, but that didn't happen. But, that one piece where they went with him, I thought that was okay. Now, in a moment, we're going to talk to Mitch Wolf about the offense. We're going to get his thoughts about how BC looked and some of the issues that are still there for the Eagles in Week 4 in ACC play. But, all right, college fantasy fanatics, have you heard about PrizePicks? PrizePicks is a daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and I know you will too. PrizePicks is a leader in college sports daily fantasy. They offer more college football playoffs props than anyone in the world and offer all the star players of the Power 5 as well as mid-major players you may not have even heard of. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdown and even interceptions thrown. When you pick 2 to 5 players, the over and under on their predictions, you can win up to 10 times on your entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. PrizePicks allows mixed sports entry, so you could pick the over on Tom Brady along with the Patrice Bergeron for the Bruins. You could do all that on the same entry. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePick is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Now you can use promo code LOCKEDON, and PrizePicks will match any deposit made up to $100 with a 100% deposit match. Don't hesitate to check out prizepicks.com and make sure to use that promo code LOCKEDON, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. We're dissecting or doing an autopsy on Saturday's 21-6 loss. I'm not going to be too sullen about it, because who would want to listen to that? But we got to get into the realism of what actually happened on Saturday. We were lucky and fortunate enough that our staff writer, Mitch Wolf, who comes on Mondays onto Locked On Boston College, was actually in the press box for that game. And Mitch is going to be able to tell us a little bit about what he noticed at the game. Mitch, how's it going?
Oh, it's all right. I picked an absolute banger of a game to attend in person, so that was a nice little thing. But to counteract your original point, that misery loves company. So I think we'll have a decent amount of listeners this week trying to figure out what went wrong.
At least I gotta say, the last game I got to was NC State. At least your game, they were in it for most of it.
That is true. Well,
NC State, I had to watch 2 quarters of watching just garbage. You know what I mean?
Yep,
like it was just like on and on and on. So at least you had that piece. But anywho, let's talk about this quarterback situation. It's Emmett Morehead. It was Dennis Grosel. What were your thoughts on this rotation they were doing? Because I said in the first segment, I didn't understand it. I feel at this point, if you're going to go with Morehead, just let him get his lumps at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild. And, we got the word that it was going to be Grosel starting. And that kind of like you talked about last week, that made sense, especially given Hafley's comments. And after the first, I think it was 2 drives, I'll say this. I thought for most of the game, I thought Frank Cignetti and the offense staff did a pretty good job calling this game. They came out in empty sets out of shotgun. They called a lot of quick passes, a lot of RPOs to get the ball out of Dennis Grosel's hands quickly. And that worked well. The problem was when they of course then eventually tried to go deep, and I think one of the first drives ended in a field goal, and then the next one Grosel misses Jalen Gill deep, and nothing comes of it. So after that, they make the switch, which is like, all right, that's fine, let's do it, and it goes decently well. Morehead misses his first career pass, deep shot to Zay, very close deep shot. Next play, I think it looked almost like the exact same play. He just hits him on the other sideline, perfect ball, great. They get a field goal that drive. Okay, cool. But throughout the rest of the game, I think you could tell that it kind of got to Morehead, the speed of the game, because he was, he would try to get to his first read. It wouldn't be there. And then he would panic in the pocket and then usually kind of just take a sack. So I'm not sure if it's worse to go with that, because essentially in terms of how drives pan out, a sack is pretty much always as bad as a turnover. So I'm not sure how much they're going to keep going with Morehead. He does obviously present more physical talent, even as a runner. But yeah, their whole rotation is weird, because obviously then you have the play where he gets hit in the head or something and it has to come off and Grosel goes back in. Like, okay, that's weird. But so then that goes to halftime, and we got the word that Morehead was healthy, and he got evaluated and was fine and would be coming back in. But then Dennis Grosel starts the second half, and we were all very confused as to what was going on. So Grosel gets a drive or two. He does hit Zay on a deep pass, which fantastic for them. Love to see that. But after a few more drives, they put Morehead back in, and it's just kind of like, I really don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, so it goes back to what I said. I had readers ripping me because I called Emmett Morehead raw and unexperienced. And I want to say to the people that were ripping me, like, were you watching the same game? Because, yeah, he had a 44-yard pass, but every other time he went back to pass, he kind of fed right into what I said.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not there to rip on the kid, but he looked raw.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like a true freshman making his first career start on the road in his first action playing live football against a different opponent since 2019. So, that the results were to be as expected. And there were times where he wasn't helped as much. The offensive line had a pretty rough game pass blocking from specific players. And there was obviously the big play where the snap went over his head and they were in decent field position. That just kind of killed that drive. So that really sucked. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know where we stand in terms of moving forward, because I think both players put limits on this offense in very different ways. So I don't really know what they're going to do moving forward, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest question. And Hafley on Sunday's press conference, again, made it vague. So you're going to all have to wait until Friday night again to find out who the quarterback is, because they're playing Virginia Tech at night. Now, Mitch, let's bring up the offensive line, because as limiting as the quarterback play has been, I honestly put that 1A, 1B with the offensive line, because I feel like the offensive line is causing as much problems as Dennis Grosel's inability to throw the long ball and Emmett Morehead being young. What is your thoughts on that?
I would agree to a point. I wouldn't completely agree with that statement, because I will still maintain that guys like Zion Johnson, Christian Mahogany, and Alec Lindstrom, maybe to a little bit of lesser extent, are playing quite well. I still think the issue is mostly on the tackles. I think Tyler Vrabel went out really early in the game with a upper body injury, and Jack Conley replaced him. And I really don't know how else to say this than that Jack Conley can't start at left tackle anymore this season, unless they want to get their quarterbacks killed, because there were multiple times where he just very obviously just whiffed on his block. And there was one time where he, to his credit, he tried to get out in his pass set, but he overset and the guy just went right by him on the inside. And he's just not playing at a competent level to protect the quarterback. And, at one point they took him out. They moved Zion Johnson to left tackle, where he played in 2020, and put in Ozzy Trapilo at left guard. And I asked Jeff Hafley about that after the game, and his response was pretty short and just saying we needed to protect the quarterback better. So I think they need to make a change there. If Tyler Vrabel's out for an extended amount of time, I don't know if that means moving Zion back there or means playing somebody else there, but they have to make a change there.
I mean, you're saying too, like with Connolly, it looked like it wasn't like last week where like Vrabel just got confused on an assignment. It was like a guy and he just completely whiffed on him.
Yeah,
like
he was just getting
one-to-one.
Yes, he was just getting out-athleted by the guys. And Syracuse has a pretty good defensive line, so I'll give them some credit, but he was just getting out-athleted by those guys. Now, if they want to move Zion to left tackle and move Conley inside to guard, where you don't need to be as athletic side to side, I think that could work. If they want to keep Trapilo on the bench for a little while longer to get him some seasoning. But yeah, I just don't think you can have a guy you can't have Jack Conley playing left tackle anymore for this team. I'm sorry.
Trapilo is an interesting one though, because he's the name that I've heard as like the future big time offensive lineman. So if he's ready, I mean, he's gonna be he's really long. He's really tall. I think he probably moves well. So, I'd be fine with giving him a shot at this point. If you're gonna start playing some true freshmen, I'd say put him out there, see what happens. All right. In a moment, Mitch and I are going to talk about the defense and go over some of the nitty gritty of this game, because there were some other things I feel like I want to talk about with Mitch. But before we do that, let's chat a little bit about Built Bar, which I just had one before this episode, because I took my kids out trick-or-treating, totally screwed up my dinner. And so I went with a Built Bar, and it helped me knock that hunger down. So I felt good to get this podcast going. If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you are missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. You have to try it. Most protein bars are chalky, waxy, or hard to choke down. Sometimes you need a glass of water just to get it down. Not with a Built Bar. It tastes awesome. I mean, I would love to have a Built Bar every day. I usually have one as a snack. Low carb, low calorie, low sugar, and high in protein, and it's delicious. So many flavors. The one I just had was the coconut. It tastes literally like an Almond Joy, but the calories, the fat, it's so much lower, so much better for you. If you head over to builtbar.com and use promo code LOCK15, you'll get 15% off your next order. Again, head on over to builtbar.com and use promo code LOCKed15. This is AJ Black. I'm here with Mitch Wolf. We're talking about Saturday's loss to Syracuse, Boston College's fourth straight loss, and really a game that's continuing to lower expectations for the season and really putting a dark cloud over the fan base who's been struggling through this. And I totally get it. Now, I thought the defense played really well, Mitch. The third quarter was a bit of a mess, and I thought that was more of a product with the inability of the offense to get the hell off, stay on the field. Talk a little bit about your impressions of the defense.
So I tweeted something out to the effect of this, and I got some flack for it. I thought the defense played extremely well. They only allowed 14 points, and Hafley echoed this in his press conference. He was very impressed by the defense. They only allowed 14 points, which on most games, if you allow only that amount of points, you can win the game. And, special teams error, that is what it is. But back to the defense. I thought they did on the average for the majority of the game, did a good job of limiting Sean Tucker and the Syracuse rushing offense. And I know that's going to sound crazy because they ran for 293 yards on 47 carries, 2 touchdowns, 6.2 yards per carry. However, I believe about 130 of those Sean Tucker yards came on 3 carries. So if you take that away, that's about 70 yards on 23 carries for Sean Tucker. And so a 3 yard per carry average. And I thought that's the thing about like defensive football is you need to look at it kind of more about the process and the play to play results as opposed to just the box score. And I obviously like letting up explosives is bad. That is what it is. Sean Tucker's a great player. I'll say that. He was really special to watch in person, but it's not like Tucker was gashing them every play. It wasn't like a 10-yard carry, 12-yard carry, 8-yard. It was, 1-yard carry, 3-yard carry, -1 yard, 50 yards. And that is bad. I'll give it that. But on the average, the BC defense was winning against the run. And to make things even better, they made the Syracuse passing game completely irrelevant and ineffective. I mean, Garrett Schrader attempted 14 passes. He only completed 5 for 65 yards. And again, most of that came on one big throw early in the game. So they pretty much took him completely out of the game. And I think the other thing is that, we talked about how Malik Cunningham kind of tore up this defense, and I wasn't too concerned about that because a lot of that came on him scrambling. And again, that's kind of a process over results thing where, when they did designed runs with Malik Cunningham, they were at least a little more effective in stopping him. He was still just out athleting some of the BC defenders, but especially with a guy like Isaiah Graham Mobley out for this game, if you take away Garrett Schrader's that 48-yard touchdown run, where again, that's explosive, but that's 15 carries for 38 yards. That's including a sack yardage. That's part of it, but that's like 2 yards a carry. So, he presents a much different challenge that he's not going to scramble as much and not get like those huge explosive plays as a scrambler. But I thought the defense played extremely well. I thought Elijah Jones had a fantastic game, being super sticky in man coverage. They did some good job getting pressure. They had that big sack fumble from Marcus Valdez on one of Syracuse's first drives. Vinny DePalma had a good game in relief. He had led the team in tackles with 11. He had a tackle for loss. I thought Cam Arnold played well. So this game is really not on the defense. I thought a lot of them played extremely well. Just, there were times where just the Syracuse, key players just got the better of them.
And I kind of wax poetic about this, but as I kind of mentioned, I don't think you answered it there though. The offense, them getting off the field constantly and not being able to sustain drives. How much is that impacting the defense? And what I'm starting to think their issues in the third quarter. I've seen people throwing up the Hafley can't adjust. Hafley's blah, 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 blah. I think it's more that the offense is struggling and the defense is just having to do so much week after week, and it just wears them down. So then you have these explosive plays like you saw with Tucker, you saw with Schrader, where it was sloppy arm tackles. They couldn't shed blocks because they're getting beat up and tired. Are you on the same page with that a little bit, or am I off on this?
I'm not 100% sure because, I think it was in one of the Manning casts on ESPN a few weeks ago, where they've kind of debunked the myth of halftime adjustments that even in college, like you don't really have enough time to like truly make big adjustments. So I'm not sure that, even arguing either way on that is relevant, but I'm also not sure if I think I'd be more willing to accept that argument if the BC defense was kind of giving up those chunk plays very consistently, like on a down to down basis, like if they were giving up 10 yards every carry to Sean Tucker. But I think you could argue the other way in that, every once in a while they'll just kind of get out of their gaps because they are in the field so much. But in this game, I'm not sure I would say that was the biggest issue. I think maybe against NC State, I would be a little in that game, and against Louisville, I'd be more likely to agree.
Okay.
But I think in some games, yes, in some games, perhaps no. I think in general, though, the defense is just getting out there too much, and the offense does need to be more effective, obviously.
Right. Obviously, when you had Phil Djokovic out there, they'd have like 6-7 minute long drives, and that just kept the defense fresher. Now, the other big play wasn't even on defense. It was special teams. And because it's the ACC network red zone or whatever they call that, when it's on Nesson, which was great. If you ever want to hear a Dino Babers pregame inspirational story that's completely muted for some reason that you can't hear, check out the ACC RSN, because that's usually what they do. Anyway, they punt the punt. Watching on TV, couldn't tell what the heck happened there because they didn't have any good film of it. But according to Hafley after the game, it was a low punt and led to basically the back-breaking touchdown. Talk a little bit about that play, Mitch.
Yeah, when that ball came off Carlson's foot from the press box, I was like, oh, no, that's not good, because the reporter next to me basically said that had zero hang time, and it really was. Like, it was, I'll caveat all this with saying this. I don't know a ton, if anything, really about like punting mechanics and all that, but it came off Carlson's foot kind of weird in that it was just kind of straight and spinning and just went right down the field, like line drive almost. And I think the issue with that is then BC defenders just don't have time to get down there and get in their proper positioning. And that's kind of what led Jackson to bring that back. But kind of as soon as that ball went in the air, like, that doesn't look right. And then they obviously get the big play off it. So, that's two pretty big costly mistakes from the punting unit in the last 3 weeks that really kind of changed the complexion of the game. So I'm not, and again, I don't know a ton about the intricacies of special teams, but basically, I'll say this: in close games, you can't have mistakes like that happen because they will, pretty much put the game out of reach.
It's funny because I was on ESPN Syracuse there, the Syracuse affiliate up there, talking about the game a couple days ago. And they were like, talk about a guy that we're not going to know about. And of course I talked about Grant Carlson. And now, I'm
on the Friday show, didn't Eric say that the Eagles would get a special teams touchdown?
Yes. He did. He gave the edge. He gave the edge to BC. Eric is getting into some hot water on our podcast. Did you see him tweet out on Saturday the "Miss Me" with Adazio picture on it?
Yeah. And then I think Adazio went on to have a pretty rough game, if I remember correctly, this weekend. But we'll talk about that on our next show.
I almost spit my coffee out on Saturday morning when I saw that Bear on College Game Day had Colorado State as one of his underdogs of the week.
Ooh.
And I was like, yeah, I'm not touching that one. All right. So Mitch, I have one last question about this game, and fans probably not going to care, but I'm going to ask anyways. How's the food up in the press box?
It wasn't great. I'll be honest. It was burgers. And then they had, I'll say this. I'm kind of a picky eater. So like the sides they had like a potato salad and then some kind of like broccoli and raisin salad, and I just wasn't ever going to touch that. But the burgers were fine. They were in kind of a heating tray. They were all right. There were cookies as well, but there weren't like any chips up there or anything. So this is my only time I've been in the press box for a college bowl game, but I would say this was probably below average.
All right, Mitch. So where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE. It was pretty busy this weekend with traveling. But I'll definitely be trying to rewatch the game from a film perspective this week and, try to highlight some issues that maybe the Eagles can get corrected before they have to have a quick turnaround this week against Virginia Tech.
All right. And we'll have Mitch back on tomorrow to talk about games from around the country. Thank you, Mitch. This is AJ Black. Thank you all for listening. This is Locked On Boston College. We do this 5 days a week. If you are listening to us and you have done this on a regular basis, thank you. I recommend hitting that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts to make sure that you get Locked On Boston College every day. And if you have already listened to this and want another great college podcast, check out Locked On ACC. It's hosted by Candace Cooper and has a rotating guest of Locked On hosts, including yours truly, who joins her on Wednesday, where I do my power rankings with Candace. So this is AJ Black. Thank you all for listening. Talk to you all soon.